After I attended the VOTEC in Beloit, Kansas, came back, worked with my dad for a while and my brother. That's just one of the scenes of me by a soybean field there. This all started, I put my first crop in 1976 in the fall, put my first wheat crop in. Of course, you know, we had very modest equipment back then. That was kind of our second tractor that we had. We were hauling some pipe there. That's my youngest daughter helping out there. Did have corn. We had corn, wheat, soybeans, grain sorghum. Had a little bit of alfalfa there for a while and had a few cattle. It was a very small operation, actually, half dry land, half irrigated. You can tell that's that combine I'm using there, a 6600 John Deere. That is very minute compared to the standards today. But that was the bigger machine I actually had in my last years that I was farming. I farmed until the end of 2001. That's a picture of all my three daughters with me on the combine there at some point. That was my dad. His name was Walter. He was very good about helping transition over into me working on the farm and eventually taking over the home farm operation there. Actually, he was so much older than me that he retired the year I graduated high school. I wasn't even quite 18 yet, and I had to put my first crop in before I was even 18. So it was kind of a weird transition. Anyway, there's a picture of him one winter with me as we were picking corn. And this is not terrible corn that you're looking at here. This is our very first popcorn crop. And my dad and I were taking a look at it. We'd never harvested popcorn before. I think we grew that for about 10 years. A lot of guys around Byron, Nebraska used to grow popcorn. They still grow popcorn. Depends on the year. It can be a good crop money-wise, or it's just kind of so-so. Kind of risky because of the stature of the plants. You will note that I'm wearing a DTN cap, and that was kind of the genesis of how I got into talking about markets. Back in 1986, I believe, I started working with Data Line, which became DTN. I was their district rep. I was the only one they had in Kansas for quite a while, and I was the first one to put on a marketing seminar. And the company liked it enough that they ended up putting on their own after that. Here's another aspect. I used to grow Christmas trees on the farm on some of the acreage there next to the place. So I used to call it about anything for a buck. We had popcorn, Christmas trees, you name it, just about anything.
Hey Marlin, before you get too deep into the full history, and just talking about markets there and your experience with DTN, it'd be great if you could just kind of go into some of the exhibits that you had there. Those reports that you called out and you were interested in showing on what's going on in grain markets.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I don't know if I can get those to show up here, Keith. Let's try.
Yeah, I can see them.
I don't know if you can see it here, but on the let me shrink this over here. The corn condition screen. A lot of folks were talking about those conditions. This is the I-80 corridor that we like to watch, and people were talking about from Nebraska through Ohio along the I-80 corridor, and you can tell very good conditions. 83% in Nebraska. Wow. 85% good to excellent in Iowa. Illinois condition went up 9 points this past week, up to 65%, but still only at 65%, so trailing the western end of the Corn Belt in their condition. Just kind of wanted to point that out there. As far as the soybean condition, let's see if I can find that one here. Here it is. We had the, that's the planting, I'm sorry. Well, maybe I don't have the right one loaded in there. My apologies on that. But anyway, the national condition summary, you can tell the soybeans were 72% good to excellent over here, and it was up 2% from what we had the previous week. So the thing is, everything is off to a good start. And Keith, that leads me into tomorrow's crop production and the supply and demand report. So everybody is looking for some really big numbers. And for the production on the corn, they're actually looking at 178.5 from Wall Street Journal survey of analysts that they did, and soybeans about 50. Now that is similar to what we had about a month ago from USDA. The question is, are they going to adjust that based on conditions? And remember, we had been looking at initial acreage of 97 million acres of corn. Keith, I know that North Dakota had a lot of corn standing in the field yet maybe a week or so ago, and some analysts were telling me that they may have 1.5 million, maybe as much as 2 million acres that they're not going to be able to plant it this year. And so there's a lot of question about how much of that they're going to have to subtract from their actual production numbers this year. The problem is the analysts are telling me they don't think that they will actually address that in this report. They're going to wait until the end of the month, and that's going to be on the 30th when we get the planted acreage update and also the grain stocks report. That'll be the quarterly grain stocks. And so some are telling me that this may be more of a minor report. There could be some surprises in there, but everybody's going to be watching for what China demand will be, what the feed usage demand will be, if there will be any abandonment. Of course, that could be a factor there. Ethanol usage, they're wondering how much will be used for that because ethanol production is ramping up now. And so that could be a factor. And we're gonna be anxious to see how they're going to factor that all in when we get these ending stocks numbers coming out tomorrow. And then when it comes to the wheat numbers, will USDA take a stand and factor in any drought damage or freeze damage to the crop? Harvest is already creeping into Kansas, I understand. I heard today where there were a few loads now turned in southern Kansas. So it has now begun for the year 2020. And sounds like in Oklahoma and Texas, the yields were okay, but now the big question mark is as you get into Kansas, how are the yields going to do on the wheat? And is that really going to be declining big time as you get into the western half of the state when you get into that freeze damage area? By the way, I don't know if you heard yesterday, they had a terrible windstorm that was all the way from Texas through Kansas into eastern Colorado, central Nebraska, and even into South Dakota. All kinds of damage. I heard it mowed off a lot of wheat in eastern Colorado. Mowed off a lot of cotton. I hear thousands of acres of cotton were lost and some corn. The Texas Panhandle yesterday, and that went all the way to South Dakota. Some areas reported over 100-mile-an-hour winds yesterday. So that will not be reflected in this report, but it just goes to show you that as we've been talking with analysts on the Market Day report today on RFD-TV, this is probably the time of year where you will have the optimum plant conditions on corn and soybeans, and now it's going to be risky moving forward from here on out. The crop ratings, it'll be hard to hold them this high through the season. So Keith, with that, I know you've got some numbers too.
Yeah, thanks, Marlon. That was fantastic, and I know people have been talking about crystal ball. So I mean, I think a lot of that weather is probably shaken out from that tropical storm. But yeah, we've got some numbers ourselves. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Yeah. So this is our our figures. So commodity by Barchart, for everybody that does or doesn't know, we provide data for all of the ag markets, right? We do it for agribusinesses, ag tech, crop insurance, ag lenders, anybody who has to deal with ag markets. We're working with them. So one of the things that we're doing that we just released this year are our own yield forecasts. And that's one thing that we want to show you. So we, as Marlon mentioned, the USDA figures from the May report were 178.5 bushels per acre for corn, 49.8 bushels per acre for beans. And those are due to be updated in tomorrow's WASDE release. We're going to be, keeping an eye out on that because, as Marlon said, those could be revised either up or down. But from what I'm seeing out there, it's where people are talking, the numbers could potentially go higher. We are also producing our own estimates. So our forecast, which were initially released on June 2nd, came in at 172.4 bushels per acre. This is at the national level, and that those were for June 2nd. So they have been updated since then. Beans came in at 48.8 bushels per acre, so a little bit below where the USDA was at for both corn and beans, and then the Wall Street Journal forecast that he mentioned is as well. But since that June 2nd release, we put out a little press release about that, which we'll be doing monthly, the first Tuesday every month. Be on the lookout for that. We've actually since revised our estimate upwards towards the USDA's forecast based on field level intelligence, right? So our estimates, our forecasts as of today are up. Corn has gone up from 172.4 bushels per acre up to 175.1 bushels per acre. And meanwhile, beans have been relatively flat against what we previously reported on the second. So, based on that and the way that we use those forecasts internally and our clients use them, the overall trend would be that yields are looking at it, they're improving. And if there was going to be a change in the USDA's report tomorrow, it's likely that it would be to the upside. Now, that being said, these are not survey-driven figures coming from the USDA, so they're all based on modeling results. So it's likely that there isn't going to be a meaningful change, just based on kind of what we've seen historically, and then how close our estimates are to theirs. So this is a live stream exclusive right there. So our Commodity View Pro users can get these updated estimates every day. But for the general public, we are only releasing these before the WASDE release, each month's WASDE release on this live stream. And those are the most up-to-date figures that you can possibly get right now. So I'll tell you a little bit more about our yield forecast indexes. If you were on last time, you know about them, but I'll give you a little bit more information. So they're calculated using the latest geospatial technology out there, right? So we take satellite imagery, we distill it down into tiny little pixels, and then we say, this is corn, these are soybeans, and here's how all the indicators that can be derived from those images, how they suggest that yields or production and emergence is looking for this growing season. So we crunch those numbers every day, and then we push new estimates out for over 3,000 individual growing areas in the U.S., right? So starting at the county level and going all the way up to the national level, which is what we were showing on that original, on that first page, we are publishing new index values every day. So real exciting stuff. They tend to be a little bit variable during the early parts of the growing season. So, June, July, August, and then, start selling in towards September and October as production and yield and all that kind of levels out. So we currently calculate those for beans and corn in the U.S. And, the use cases that we've seen for our clients on those have been, looking to anticipate USDA estimate revisions, either to the upside or downside. So if our numbers change significantly from our previous report to the upside, and depending on how those relate to where the USDA was previously, then you might expect or have a reason to believe that there could be a revision on the USDA side of things. Additionally, folks that are in crop marketing use those to zero in on the perfect crop marketing strategy. So if you have a view on where futures prices are going to go, where cash prices are going to go, then obviously you're going to have a view on how you want to market your grain. And then building better loan and insurance underwriting practices. So we cover all of this stuff on our website. I would encourage you to take a look if you're interested in getting deeper into those use cases. Another way that you can access these yield forecasts is through our free report. So you just go on barchart.com/commodity, and under our resources section, we have price reports. And this is totally free to sign up. Here's the example from June 2nd. So you can see 172.4, which we obviously have revised up since then to 175 and change. And those are going to be published the first and third Tuesday of each month. So completely free. They'll arrive in your inbox. I think it's at 10 a.m. Central Time, and you're going to get the enhanced view of what's going on in the market. So new figures are going to be published on the 16th. And I would expect that there would be some change versus what we have today, just given that they update every day based on new information. So what's in the report, as you can see here, we've got the national figures, the headline figures right there at the top, easily to digest. And then we also cover a lot of the major crop growing states, so Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Minnesota, so on and so forth. All those are going to be in that report every 2 weeks. So really good information. You can't necessarily get that anywhere else. You can get, other people are producing and giving people the national forecast, but the state level forecast, we take pride in our ability to make information available to really anybody, right? They're available for free, so anybody can sign up. A couple things that are worth paying attention to here is you can get these updated estimates and forecasts in Commodity View Pro. So as I mentioned, they update every day. You can view those geospatially in our maps, and then through our cash prices windows. and I can actually just pull those up right now. So here's the map. You can see Illinois, Iowa. You can zoom in, zoom out. Really cool what you can do here. So you can actually play around with this. And let's see, I'm going to choose not just states, but let's look at crop reporting districts, and boom, my map updates with all that information. You can even play the historical information, our historical estimates over time. So if you want to see how these change throughout the growing season, this play button right here will be able to animate that for you. So there's corn. I'll just quickly pull up beans, as you can see, and just to kind of show you the level of depth that we have here, I'll just go quickly into counties. Boom, it's lightning fast, and you can just zero in on your particular region that's of most interest to you. So pretty cool stuff there. And the cash prices window. So if you can or can't see that, it's a little bit small, but really it's just a table that you can filter and pull whatever you want. So right now I've got state level corn forecasts available. Let me just flip that to beans. Actually, that's beans and corn. Go to beans there. All right. What about the crop reporting districts? Boom. If you want to search based on zip code, you can do that as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be by boundaries. So let's just say here, this is, I live in 60657. We don't grow a lot of corn or beans here, but it's all available. So you can just type in whatever zip code is most relevant to you, and you're going to get our latest and greatest in there. So pretty cool stuff, super accessible. You can get the free stuff through our report, or you can get these, more detailed and daily figures in Commodity Boot Pro. One last thing I'll say on this is you can also read about how you might be able to use these forecasts in our free white paper. So this is also under our resources tab. There's going to be a white paper section there. Go ahead and download it completely free. It's like 30 pages. It's got a ton of information and tells you really everything you need to know about how yield forecasts have performed over time, what's been going on with the USDA's data over the past few decades, how it's improved a lot, but that there's still opportunities for those to improve their crop marketing strategies, make better underwriting decisions, so on and so forth. So feel free to take a look at those resources. They're there for you, and most of them for free. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can contact us on our contact form on the website. That's barchart.com/commodity. You can email me at keith@barchart.com if you want to reach out direct. But that's kind of the overview of what we've got going on right now. So, Marlin, it looks like you had something to say there.
No, I think that is such cool stuff, and all the new technologies you're able to implement and make it available to farmers. I think it's pretty amazing stuff, especially as granular as it is, and you can drill down into a localized area and look at cash basis, for example. I love that. So kudos on a good job.
Yeah, thanks. We got a great team of data scientists. They're at this stuff all the time, and we keep developing new products. So we're really close on releasing basis forecasts. We're excited to roll those out and get those in the hands of our clients and our partners, and be on the lookout for those in the coming months.
I'm just curious, if you have a second, how much lag time is it from when you take a satellite spatial image to when you run through all the formulas and everything, and it shows up as an adjustment on your yield forecast?
Yeah, sure. So we grab all that data in the wee hours in the morning. I think we start kind of processing that at about 7 a.m. and it actually doesn't take that long. There's a ton of data out there, so it's just kind of pulling it down, grabbing it. But then once we have all that available, then we start crunching the figures, and we turn that around pretty quickly. So just really a few minutes, and then it's available in our system. But we're coming up with new ways to improve the forecast as well. So we're integrating other satellite imagery sources that we can use to kind of arbitrate between who's got the best information out there and what's made available sooner, right? Because the way the satellites work, the higher frequency or the more often that you get access to the imagery, the less resolution that you have, right? So it would just be on an orbit that's further outside of the Earth, and you have less resolution. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? You can have really high resolution, really great pixels, if you will, but you're going to get the updates less frequently. So we're always we're in the process of integrating more data to make our items more robust, and then eventually we're looking to scale those into other domiciles and crops. So wheat obviously is a gap in what we have right now. So we're looking at wheat. We're also looking at how we can do something for Brazil, how we can do it for China, all sorts of different places. So the U.S. is just where we're starting, but it's the way that we've built the system. It scales globally, and we're excited about it.
It'd be really cool, especially when you get to corn tasseling time and you get into August with the soybeans. That'll be invaluable.
Yeah, no, we're very keen on it, and looking forward to telling everybody a lot more about it. So, you know, I didn't mean to talk about our stuff the whole time. So, you know, I'd love to talk more about, you know, you, Marlin, you know, how your background, how you got into the industry, all that good stuff. I think, you know, our viewers are really interested in hearing more stories about what, you know, the leaders in the ag marketplace, how they got where they are. So, you know, kind of with that said, I know you started talking about your background a bit earlier, and you were showing some slides. But if you want to tell us a little bit more about how you got into the business, that would be fantastic.
All right. Yeah. So maybe we can pick up where I'll just skip forward here a little bit. The very next slide was where I was actually one of, I think, only two people back in 1997. No, 90. Yeah, I think it was 1997. My first radio job was working at KFRM in Kansas, and I was still farming full time back then, but the internet was just evolving back then, believe it or not. It was in its infancy, and we started using some remote control equipment. And Kyle Bauer, the owner at KFRM, was good enough to allow me to try testing some of that remote control equipment. What you're looking at is a newspaper article featuring me with a studio set up in my home office in the basement of our farm in northern Kansas, 80 miles away from the station. And I was literally broadcasting there to people in 8 states from my home studio there. There's another article on it. And you can see the setup we had back then. This is when we were still using dial-up modems, believe it or not, and they were just getting DSL. So it has presented me an opportunity to talk to a lot of famous folks. That was Pat Roberts there. Here's one of the last days before they closed down the Kansas City Board of Trade. Rock Markwood, I remember interviewing him with Cargill Investor Services. Yeah, I had darker hair back then. Then in 1999, I started podcasting, or actually I set up a web site called Worldwide Ag Network, and I was doing podcasting about 10 years before they called it podcasting. I was doing ag markets and news and weather, and it was all online from my home studio there. And so I did that for several years, and you can see there's several magazine and newspaper articles talking about that. It was really new back then. That led me to take a job in North Carolina at Raleigh with the Southern Farm Network. There's Steve Troxler, the North Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture, that introduced me to network radio. That was at a trade show there. There's Chuck Connor. A lot of folks may remember him, Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. I was president of the North Carolina Farm Writers and Broadcasters that we were having a convention there. One of the stories I did when I was at Southern Farm Network, I got a national award. It was called the Oscar in Agriculture Award, about teaching kids about agriculture. Then I moved to Western Nebraska to KRVN. A lot of listeners and viewers here may know KRVN out in Western Nebraska, the largest ag station for coverage in the nation. It goes from Texas Panhandle all the way to South Dakota. Had a chance to talk with kids. The guy seated is Dave Thorell. He was running the board, and he's now in the Nebraska Hall of Fame for broadcasting. So anyway, it was a treat to work with all those fine folks. Then I had a chance to jump to Nashville, where I am now. And this is our rural radio studio. Zach Troutman is our studio producer and engineer in the foreground there. And I was just in there a little bit ago doing some stuff right before I came on here. That's what our studio looks like.
Yeah.
Our early TV studio.
Just unrelated to kind of what, everything you're going through there, you talk about Nashville. It'd be interesting just to kind of like get your take on the change that's happened in that city the last 10 years, because it's just been explosive growth, right?
Yeah, right. It's I think it's one of the top 2 fastest growing cities in the nation right now. Remember how I told you my hometown was 83 people right now? At last check, this is before the coronavirus update. At last check, we're growing, I call it about 1.5 Byrons per day. Probably about 110, 120 people a day moving into Nashville.
Oh, wow.
That's wild. Believe all the building going on here. It's kind of insanity right now. Yeah, lots of stuff going on. I'll go ahead and
and kick it back to you if you want to take over the.
No. I was curious. Didn't mean to interrupt there at all. I just love hearing about cities that are growing. You know, I'm based in Chicago. We're pretty flat. The Midwest is kind of flattened down. If you think about all the major cities across Michigan and Ohio, it's interesting to hear about growth, right? And even New York, right, is not really growing anymore. So you're seeing it in like Texas, Austin, Texas is growing gangbusters. Tennessee is growing a lot, whether it's in Chattanooga or Nashville, and all these different pockets. And mentioned COVID there. It's just interesting what that trend's going to look like, given that people are maybe going to be working remote more over the coming years. And maybe that's a long-term trend. Maybe it's temporary. I don't know. But I don't think the growth is going to stop for you guys.
Almost all the analysts that I work with every day through RFD-TV and rural radio here, I think almost all of them are working from home these days. And it's getting to the point where I think a lot of them really like working from home. I don't really know how that's going to work if they do go back to work. For example, at the CME Group trading floor there in Chicago, I'm hearing rumors that they may try and reopen that trading floor around August. Question is everybody going to want to go there again? They opened up the New York Stock Exchange again, but there's only limited involvement now. So it's going to be kind of fascinating, I think.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I mean, you can't really tell, but this is actually my kid's playroom that I'm in right now. I'm looking at a miniature Nerf basketball and a toy cement mixer. So you get used to it, you adjust, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting trend, and we'll see if it's going to continue. How is Nashville doing with like reopening? Are you guys pretty much fully open? Is everything back to normal?
Well, I believe we're in phase 2. We were kind of creeping toward phase 3, but they had that one batch of rioting that occurred here a couple of weeks ago, and that kind of put the skids on everything for a little bit. They had a little damage downtown. They pretty well cleaned that up. It was just a one-day deal. They've had a couple of protests here since then. They've been peaceful. Everything's been quiet. So yeah, they're trying to look forward, getting some big events lined up to come back in town. From what I understand, I think even the Nashville is in the running for the GOP convention this year. I believe they're also they applied yesterday to get the NFL draft here again. We had it here about a year ago, and it turned out that was the biggest one they ever had. We had 600,000 people.
I believe it.
So it's a really exciting place to be. I can't believe I went from a little farm there to end up in Nashville, and it's kind of weird because I was on the station to talk to farmers in Kansas and Oklahoma. Then I went to a network in Raleigh where I had to talk about cotton, tobacco, and peanuts instead in North and South Carolina. And then I went to Western Nebraska. We covered all the plains on a big network and several satellite stations. And now I'm talking to people in Canada too. I don't know if you know that. Rural radio covers all of Canada. And now our TV signal covers the western part of Canada too. So we continually expand. I never thought I'd go from a 300 to 400 acre farm to talking about markets on an international network. It's kind of unusual, but to me, it's my mission. They divided up the farm where I was when my parents passed on, and I could see it was coming. And so that's why I chose the option to get into broadcasting, so I can talk about it now and maybe help anybody out there avoid the pitfalls that I could see when I was actively farming. So I did that for 25 years on the farming side. Now I just try and point out things to be on the lookout for, maybe help somebody protect their bottom line a little bit if I can. That's why I love to talk about the markets. To me, I think you can make more, maybe making an extra 5 or 10 cents per bushel on what you produce, rather than trying to eke out another 5 or 10 bushels of production. That's kind of hard to do, to squeeze that out these days.
So, speaking of what's going on in the markets, like, what are you hearing from your network these days? Like, all the people that you're interviewing or talking to on the radio and on TV, on broadcast, like what's bubbling up for them? What are they excited about for this growing season?
Oh boy, I don't know if that's the phrase to use, excited about. Boy, this has been the worst year. I mean, from so many angles. And I talked with a broadcaster down in Texas today, and I also talked with a farm broadcaster in Eastern Colorado. Both of them were talking about the just hellacious windstorm moving through yesterday. In Texas, for example, they're dealing with drought. You know, they're looking at extreme drought in the high plains, the southern high plains. It's worst in southeastern Colorado and southwest Kansas. That's from my colleague who lives just west of Garden City, and he keeps talking about the dire conditions there and all the dirt and sand blowing. But in Texas, they had windstorm 90 some miles an hour, I believe. Or no, I'm sorry, it was over 70 miles an hour in Texas. They claim they lost many thousands of acres of cotton just yesterday. The sand was blowing, mowed it off. And then they have a weird condition on cotton in the southern plains where when you get a windstorm like that, it'll build up static electricity and literally fry the plants. I never knew that until I started working at RFD-TV, and that's a common thing in the southern plains, but it was widespread yesterday. So a lot of the cotton crop that they say is gone. Farmers were really despondent this morning, I understand, just having lost many thousands of acres. And it's really getting late now. I mean, it's not like you can go and put another cotton crop in at this point. That went into Colorado. The broadcaster I talked with there, Lori Boyer from Fort Morgan, Colorado, she said they lost a lot of wheat yesterday. The wind has mowed it off. They had wind up to 102 miles an hour. It destroyed a grain elevator. Just all kinds of damage there. We had a grain bin system, a very large system, like almost like a commercial elevator in South Dakota that pretty much got destroyed from, I think it was 102 mile an hour winds up there, or no, 94 mile an hour winds up there. So it was very widespread. The problem now is there's a lot of heat moving into the plains and it's expanding. It's supposed to go all the way up to, gosh, perhaps in North Dakota, maybe by this weekend with 100-degree temps. And the temperature is all of a sudden starting to turn drier. You know, we haven't had a problem with moisture for the most part this year. But when you get to the July 4th holiday, a lot of times, Keith, you probably well know too, a lot of times that means you flip a switch, climatologically speaking, and a lot of times in the markets too, and you will flip things around. And that's coming up here very soon. So are we in an inverted year right now? One analyst and I were talking about that this morning. Everything is so upside down. Normally you'd be making highs in corn in June, the majority of the time. This year we're closer to the contract lows. Does that mean you invert that this year? There's a lot of questions about that with this report coming up later on tomorrow. So we're looking forward to what the numbers have, and then especially at the end of the month.
Yep. All right. So excitement's not the word to use, but you know, definitely uncertainty and you know, we'll see what happens.
Very deep concern. Yeah. I mentioned earlier that the wheat harvest is moving into Kansas now. It sounds like in some areas the protein is really high. I have heard in southern Kansas they're actually paying a premium for protein there. Sometimes they don't do that, but apparently this year they are. So I'll have to wait and see how it works out as that harvest moves further north. It's that time of year already, and you can always tell every time the wheat gets ripe in the plains, temperatures will always get into the triple digits. It's funny when you get that wheat turning that yellow color, how it reflects the heat. It's just like a big oven out there. So yeah, we'll see how it works out in the next week or two.
So what's one prediction that you have for grain markets in 2020? What do you think?
Well, I can't make predictions. I'm not a grain analyst or anything, but I just talk with analysts all day long, and everybody is very perplexed this year. And in general, it seems like the attitude is expect the unexpected, and that kind of leads me to that thought I was just making a little bit ago, where everything is so upside down. Is it going to be totally backwards from normal thinking? Are we going to have the high of the year coming at a time when you normally would have a low of the year, or vice versa? Now, I did hear, and just a little bit ago, let me check my note here. Some folks were wondering about wheat. Of course, we're starting harvest right now, and the question is how much damage came from the drought, and also remember that freeze we had like a month ago? That has yet to be seen how much that will impact yield. But they're saying Australia has really turned around. Remember how they had such a terrible wheat crop last year with that 4-year drought? They have been getting some moisture, and things are looking better there now.
So that could keep a little pressure on the wheat trade moving forward. Also, Russia's crop, I believe they got some much needed rain, so it may not be as bad as they had feared. We'll have to watch that for wheat conditions there as well. So just something to think about. Also, I had, see, I don't think I've got it with me here anymore, but there was a story out last night about in Brazil where they now have quite a bit of corn in the northern states of Brazil. Now, I mean, you're talking, I mean, you're getting up there north of the equator. And anyway, they're so far north that it's almost the opposite growing season, and now they're calling it their third crop.
Oh, wow.
And it's adding to their overall production there. So while they had been looking at maybe 90 some million tons or something, that will put it, I think, over 100 tons.
Wow.
I forget the exact number. I wish I had that sheet here now. I was saying there was like 101.5 million tons if you count that third crop, which they don't produce a lot up there, but it's just enough to where it'll keep trickling in. That's a little bit of a concern. Didn't know if you saw the ethanol production report that came out today, but it's picking up. I mean, things are doing better, and 837,000 barrels per day now this past week. That was an increase of 72,000 barrels a day from what we had a week ago.
Okay.
So it continues to perk up. It's been up, I think, 4 straight weeks now, and the 4-week average came up 55,000 barrels a day. And the other side of the coin is the stocks keep going down, which is a friendly sign for corn. And the ethanol stocks went down 700,000 barrels last week. Now they're under 22 million at 21.8. And if you recall here a few weeks ago, it was up there like 26, I believe. So everything is pointing in the right direction when it comes to the ethanol production. And so that means the demand is going to continue to climb now for corn. That might be the shot in the arm that it really needs. But I mean, you're looking at expected ending stocks on corn of, let's see, what are they looking at? 3.34 billion bushels. That's really large. So a lot of analysts are going to be seeing if they really increase their usage for corn and bring that number down a little bit in that report tomorrow. Otherwise, it's going to be quite a burden with a lot hanging over our head.
Okay. No, that's great insight. It's great to hear what you're hearing. I know you're not a market analyst, but you certainly you play one on TV or sometimes, or you talk enough to them that you can pass as one. So
I
great.
refer to myself as the tour guide for commodities. So, anyway, I just kind of lead people around to the analysts, and let them make up their own mind.
Sure. No, that's great. So, I mean, that's really all we had for today. And one last, closing thing I have for you is, where can people find you? I know, you're on RFD-TV, you're on Sirius XM. Like, if you could just let everybody know what's the best place to find you, when they can tune in, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. RFD-TV, it's not available absolutely everywhere, but just about. Check your local cable listings or your satellite listings. We are on Dish Network. We're on DirecTV. We're on all kinds of outlets. A lot of cable channels have us on their listing. So look it up, RFD-TV. Also, and by the way, the show that I'm on in the morning, Central Time, would be Market Day Report. And it comes on at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Central. And then it runs, it's a 5-hour show. So it runs through 2 o'clock Eastern and 1 o'clock Central Time. And we do market reports about 10 minutes long every half hour. And it's all live. We're looking at live quotes from Barchart. And anyway, we're analyzing as we go. We have analysts from all around the nation that we speak with, anybody related to the grain trade and livestock trade. So you need to check it out. I mean, we talk to everybody from Canada to Texas, coast to coast. Also on rural radio, we have 2 shows called Commodity Wrap. There's a morning edition and an evening edition. We do one in the morning at 8:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 Central Time in the morning. Runs for a half hour in depth into the markets. So we have 2 different analysts on each of those shows. And the evening edition comes on at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Central Time, another half hour show. And that will be coming up a little later on today. I'll be on there, and I'll be talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions, and also Chris Robinson of TJM right there in Chicago. And we'll get their thoughts on today's trade getting set up for the report tomorrow. And
we just go on and keep doing that every day. We also have a new app now that if you can't get us on your local cable station, you can go online and you can watch it live on there, and just search for RFD-TV Now. It's a new app that we have, and then we have a sister channel called the Cowboy Channel. If you love Western sports, you can get their app too and watch like up to 6 different rodeo views, I believe, at one time. And just all kinds of sports info on there related to Western sports. So we got a lot going on. We are based in Nashville, where I work, and that's where I do the markets from. The Cowboy Channel is based at our Fort Worth studios. So we're growing all the time, and we look forward to talking with everybody out there all across North America.
Well, very cool, Marlin. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been fantastic. It's great to get a little history about the, where you came from and where you're going and all the things you're working on right now. So definitely check out Marlin on RFD-TV. RFD-TV Now, I got that one right, I think, on the App Store.
Yep.
On the App Store.
On our website, just go to rfd-tv.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Marcus Marlin as well.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining, and look forward to having you on again sometime soon. Thanks a lot, Marlon.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Keith.